Jerusalem, the 6th century before the Common Era. A divine messenger guides a company of outsiders into the sacred sanctuary. He presents them with vessels of fermented grape juice and instructs, "Imbibe." They decline, not due to divine prohibition, but because 3 centuries prior, an individual pledged his word, a promise that no descendant had ever transgressed. This narrative recounts the story of the Rechabites, a nomadic kin group that brought shame upon an entire populace and may yet persist in the present day. To comprehend the Rechabites, one must venture further back into antiquity, long preceding the establishment of a unified Israel, prior to the reign of monarchs, even before the subjugation of Canaan. We speak of a people known as the Kenites, itinerant artisans of metal who traversed the arid expanses south of the Promised Land. The Kenites were not of Israelite lineage. They were progeny of Hobab, also identified as Jethro, Moses' father-in-law. Upon his flight from Egypt after perpetrating an act of homicide against an Egyptian, Moses sought refuge in the territory of Midian. There, within the encampments of a Midianite priest named Jethro, he found sanctuary. He wed Zipporah, Jethro's daughter, and occupied himself with shepherding in the wilderness. It was in this desolate expanse that the divine presence manifested in a burning thicket, summoning Moses back to Egypt to liberate his people. Yet, the connection is not severed there. When Moses ultimately led the Israelites out of Egypt, he extended an invitation to his brother-in-law, Hobab, to accompany them. The book of Numbers chronicles this moment. "We are embarking for the place concerning which the Lord has said, 'I will give it to you.' Come with us, and we will extend to you what is good." Hobab initially expressed hesitation, but ultimately joined the Israelites. Thus, the Kenites, these desert metalworkers, kin by marriage to Moses, became steadfast allies of God's people. They were not warriors bent on conquest. They did not erect cities. They resided in portable tents, migrating from one location to another, plying their trade in copper and iron within the southern arid zones. The copper mines of Timnah, now an archaeological point of interest in the Negev desert, were once Kenite domain. Contemporary excavations have unearthed smelting furnaces, implements, and even a serpent fashioned from bronze with a gilded head reminiscent of the serpent Moses elevated in the wilderness. The first book of Chronicles records a noteworthy detail. "And the families of the scribes who resided at Jabez were the Tirathites, the Shimeathites, and the Suthites. These are the Kenites who descended from Hamath, the father of the house of Rechab. There lies the genealogical linkage." The Rechabites constituted a clan within the Kenites, their progenitor being a man named Rechab, whose appellation signified charioteer or rider. For successive generations, the Rechabites maintained the lifestyle of their Kenite forefathers. They existed on the periphery of Israelite society, yet consistently demonstrated loyalty. They never fully assimilated, nor were they entirely alien. They witnessed the ascendant and fallen reigns of kings. They observed the kingdom fracture into Israel in the north and Judah in the south. They saw errancy proliferate like an unchecked blaze throughout the nation. And then, at a pivotal juncture in history, a man named Jonadab resolved to undertake a radical course of action. He was determined to preserve the distinctiveness of his people, irrespective of the cost. The year was approximately 841 years before the Common Era. Northern Israel was embroiled in profound crisis. King Ahab had perished, and his son Joram occupied the throne. However, the predicament was not solely political. it was spiritual. Jezebel, Ahab's widowed queen, still exerted considerable sway, and with her influence came the veneration of Baal, the Canaanite deity of fertility. Idolatrous edifices dotted the landscape of the kingdom. Prophets of Yahweh were actively hunted and put to death. Israel had utterly forsaken the covenant with the God who had extricated them from Egypt. Consequently, God raised up a man named Jehu, a formidable and unyielding military commander. The prophet Elisha consecrated him as king with an explicit mandate: to utterly annihilate the lineage of Ahab and eradicate the worship of Baal from Israel. Jehu did not delay. He executed Joram, the king of Israel, and Ahaziah, the king of Judah, who happened to be visiting. Subsequently, he ordered Jezebel to be cast from a window. Canines consumed her remains in the streets of Jezreel, precisely as Elijah had foretold years earlier. Yet, amidst this carnage, an extraordinary event transpired. 2 Kings chapter 10 recounts the episode. And when he departed from there, he met Jonadab, the son of Rechab, coming to meet him. And he greeted him and said, "Is your heart right as my heart is with your heart?" And Jonadab said, "It is." Then he said, "If it is, give me your hand." Jonadab extended his hand. Jehu drew him into his chariot, and there, riding side by side, Jehu declared, "Come with me and see my zeal for the Lord." What ensued was one of the most savage episodes documented in the Old Testament. Jehu convened all the adherents of Baal under the guise of a grand sacrificial ceremony. He filled the pagan temple to capacity, ensuring no worshipper of Yahweh was within its confines, and then issued the command. 80 soldiers stormed the edifice and slaughtered every individual present. They dismantled the sacred pillars, incinerated the effigies of Baal, and transformed the temple into public sanitation facilities. The ultimate degradation imaginable. Jonadab bore witness to all of this, and something solidified within his consciousness that day. He observed the repercussions when a people abandon their deity and embrace the prevailing culture. He perceived the corruption that accompanies settled life, agriculture, the consumption of wine, and opulence. He recognized how Israel had become indistinguishable from the Kenites, whom they were divinely ordained to displace. And he made a resolution that would profoundly shape his clan for the ensuing 3 centuries. He would establish dictates, not divine statutes, but familial regulations designed to preserve the Rechabites' distinctiveness, to prevent their assimilation, and to maintain the unadorned, pure desert faith, far removed from the depravity of urban centers. 4 absolute injunctions, 4 bulwarks against apostasy, and every descendant would face a choice: complete adherence or cessation of being a Rechabite. Here are the rules transmitted from Jonadab, son of Rechab. You shall drink no wine, neither you nor your sons forever. This was not merely a directive for moderation, but an absolute prohibition. In the ancient world, wine represented more than a mere beverage. It symbolized settlement, agricultural pursuits, and Canaanite festivities. Vineyards necessitated permanent land holdings, years of cultivation, and integration into the agrarian economy. Wine was intricately linked with pagan worship, serving as libations poured to Baal and central to harvest celebrations, honoring fertility deities. Jonadab perceived wine as the gateway to assimilation, and thus he irrevocably closed that door. You shall build no houses, sow no seed, nor plant a vineyard, nor own any, but you shall dwell in tents all your days. This was the overarching decree. No permanent structures, no property ownership. While Israel constructed cities of stone, opulent cedar palaces, and elaborate temples, the Rechabites remained architecturally inconspicuous. This commandment ensured their mobility, freedom, and detachment from any fixed locale. One cannot defend what one does not possess. One cannot be corrupted by wealth that is never accumulated. The Rechabites would not partake in the sedentary economy that had transformed Israel from a nomadic populace into an agrarian nation. They were to remain pastoralists, akin to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, just as Israel was intended to remain distinct, separate, and reliant upon God rather than agricultural yields. But you shall dwell in tents all your days. This was the paramount rule. Tents, being temporary dwellings, were easily dismantled and symbolized the life of pilgrims. Later, in Hebrews chapter 11, the patriarchs would be described in precisely this manner, confessing that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth. The Rechabites embraced this principle literally. Each morning, awakening within a tent, and each night, sleeping beneath canvas, served as a constant reminder. This world is not our permanent abode. The purpose Jonadab articulated unequivocally was, that you may live many days in the land where you are sojourners. Sojourners, not citizens, not landowners. Temporary residents in a land that did not inherently belong to them. This was the crux of the matter. Remaining as sojourners preserved their identity intact. Assimilation signified spiritual demise. Separation meant survival, and it proved effective. Through the decades, the Rechabites meticulously observed these stipulations. While the kings of Israel and Judah espoused foreign consorts and venerated their deities, the Rechabites maintained their purity. While Israelite cities became replete with Asherah poles and offerings to Baal, Rechabite tents remained consecrated sanctuaries of Yahweh. While prophets lamented Judah's apostasy, the Rechabites embodied the ideal that Judah had abandoned. John Calvin, in his 16th century writings, accurately captured this essence. Jonadab appointed them to dwell in tents to teach them not to think of settling down anywhere in this world. Matthew Henry further elaborated, "The consideration that we are strangers and pilgrims should oblige us to abstain from all fleshly lusts." However, here lies the extraordinary aspect of this narrative. These were not divine injunctions. God never commanded Israel to reside in tents indefinitely, nor did he utterly prohibit wine, nor did he condemn agriculture or fixed dwellings. Jonadab's precepts were human traditions, familial customs, the deliberate choice of a solicitous patriarch. Yet, they were adhered to with a rigor exceeding that applied to the law of Moses itself. For how long? 2 Kings was composed around 841 years before the Common Era. Jeremiah prophesied between 627 and 587 years before the Common Era. Performing the calculation reveals a span of 240 years. Some estimations extend this to 300 years, encompassing 10 generations, perhaps even 12 or 15. Consider this. How many family traditions endure for 3 generations, let alone 10? The Rechabites did not merely recall the commandments. They lived them fully, without exception, without gradual erosion, without compromising with a mere "just this once." Their fidelity was absolute, spanning centuries of change, conflict, temptation, and pressure to conform. And then, during one of the most somber periods in Judah's history, God chose to employ that unwavering faithfulness as a means to impart a devastating lesson. Jerusalem, early in the 6th century before the Common Era. The world Jonadab had known had utterly vanished. Northern Israel, the kingdom comprising the 10 tribes, ceased to exist. Assyria had subjugated it in 722 years before the Common Era, deporting its populace and resettling foreigners within its cities. The 10 tribes were dispersed, absorbed, and lost to historical record. Only Judah remained, precariously. King Jehoiakim occupied David's throne, a vassal of Egypt, and was corrupt to his core. While prophets issued warnings of imminent retribution, Jehoiakim constructed opulent palaces utilizing forced labor. While the populace suffered under oppressive taxation, he paneled his chambers with cedar and adorned them with red pigments. The prophet Jeremiah directly confronted his iniquity. Woe to him who builds his house by unrighteousness, and his upper rooms by injustice, who uses his neighbor's service without wages. However, social injustice was merely a symptom. The fundamental malady was idolatry. Judah had filled Jerusalem with pagan altars. They burned incense to Baal on rooftops and prepared cakes for the Queen of Heaven in the thoroughfares. Even within Solomon's original temple, abominations had been erected. Ezekiel would later receive a vision depicting the temple's interior, showing elders of Israel worshiping creeping things and beasts depicted on the walls, women mourning for Tammuz, and men bowing to the rising sun. God dispatched prophet after prophet. Jeremiah preached in the streets, warning that Babylon would serve as the instrument of divine judgment. But his message went unheeded. Jehoiakim physically severed Jeremiah's scroll with a knife and consumed it piece by piece as the prophet articulated its contents. Subsequently, the horizon grew darker. Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had triumphed over Egypt at the Battle of Carchemish. He then turned his attention toward Judah. In 605 years before the Common Era, he initiated his invasion. Jehoiakim submitted and became his vassal, paying tribute for 3 years. Then, in his folly, he rebelled. Nebuchadnezzar's response was systematic and brutal. He dispatched contingents of Chaldeans, Arameans, Moabites, and Ammonites to ravage Judah's territory. 2 Kings, chapter 24, records, "Surely this came upon Judah by the command of the Lord to remove them from his sight, because of the sins of Manasseh, for all that he committed, and also for the innocent blood that he shed. For he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord would not pardon." It was during this period of upheaval, between 605 and 597 years before the Common Era, that something extraordinary occurred. The Rechabites, who for 240 years had peacefully resided in their tents within the desert regions surrounding Judah, were compelled to undertake the unthinkable. They had to enter Jerusalem. Imagine the gravity of that decision. For countless generations, the Rechabites had deliberately avoided urban centers. Their tents were pitched in arid territories, perhaps near Arad in the Negev, possibly in the eastern deserts, or even in the Judean hills, locales where they could sustain their nomadic existence, far removed from the urban corruption they so deeply feared. But now, with hostile incursions sweeping across the countryside and war engulfing the land, there was no alternative. Survival necessitated refuge, and the sole refuge available was within the fortified walls of Jerusalem. Thus, they arrived, entire families, elders who had never set foot in a city, children who had known only the boundless expanse of the open sky, flocks that had to be left behind or sold, tents dismantled, transported, and reassembled within the congested confines of a besieged capital. And there, within that corrupt and idolatrous metropolis, surrounded by a populace that had renounced God, the Rechabites remained steadfast, still within their tents, still abstaining from wine, still adhering to the injunctions established by a patriarch 2.5 centuries prior. Jeremiah observed them, and God had a plan, a trial. Not for the Rechabites, whose faithfulness had already been unequivocally demonstrated, but a test for Judah, a mirror wherein the nation would perceive its own shame reflected with stark clarity. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah. Go to the house of the Rechabites, and speak to them, and bring them into the house of the Lord, into one of the chambers, and give them wine to drink. It was an unusual directive. Jeremiah, the weeping prophet, the man who had spent decades imploring Judah to repent, was now tasked with bringing the Rechabites into the temple and offering them precisely what their ancestral vows forbade. This was not a suggestion. It was a divine command. And Jeremiah complied. He sought out Jaazaniah, the son of Jeremiah, the son of Habazaniah. He gathered the brothers and the entire Rechabite household, and he led them through the streets of Jerusalem, up to the Temple Mount, not to the outer courts accessible to Gentiles, but into the very house of the Lord itself, into the chamber of Jaazaniah, son of Hanan, son of Igaliah, a man of God. This chamber was situated adjacent to the chamber of the princes, above the chamber of Maaseiah, son of Shallum, the doorkeeper, a prestigious and visible location. This was not to be a private test. Any passers-by, including priests, Levites, temple officials, and worshippers, would witness the unfolding events. Jeremiah meticulously orchestrated the scene. He placed before the Rechabites bowls filled with wine, not merely a single goblet, but multiple vessels, and not just ordinary wine. The text specifies jars and cups, suggesting abundance, perhaps even fine vintages. Everything was arranged invitingly, readily accessible. Then Jeremiah, the prophet of Yahweh, the spokesperson for the Most High God, spoke. Drink wine. He wanted them to feel the weight of that moment. These were not Israelites by blood, but Kenites, descendants of Moses' father-in-law, technically foreigners. They were within God's holy temple. A recognized prophet was commanding them to perform an action, not a request, but an imperative. In Hebrew, a direct command, drink. They could have rationalized. Well, a prophet is ordering us. Surely God would not hold us accountable. They could have negotiated. Perhaps just a sip, just this once, given the extraordinary circumstances. They could have remained silent, uncomfortable, gazing at the floor. But they did none of that. The response came back clear, immediate, and unanimous. We will drink no wine. And then they explained their refusal, not defensively or apologetically, but with simple dignity. For Jonadab, the son of Rechab, our father, commanded us, saying, You shall not drink wine, neither you nor your sons forever. You shall not build houses, sow seed, plant vineyards, or own them, but you shall dwell in tents all your days, that you may live many days in the land where you are sojourners. Did you hear that? Our Father commanded us, not God commanded, or the law of Moses requires. A human ancestor, deceased for 2.5 centuries, had established these rules, and they remained inviolably faithful. They continued, We have obeyed the voice of Jonadab, the son of Rechab, our father, in all that he charged us, concerning drinking no wine all our days, we, our wives, our sons, and our daughters. We have neither built houses for ourselves to dwell in, nor do we have vineyards, fields, or seed. We have dwelt in tents, and have obeyed and done according to all that Jonadab our father commanded us. Tents. Even now, as refugees within Jerusalem, they continued to reside in temporary structures. Then they explained the unavoidable exception. But it came to pass, when Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up into the land, that we said, "Come, let us go to Jerusalem for fear of the army of the Chaldeans, and for fear of the army of the Syrians. So we dwell in Jerusalem." Observe their candor. They did not feign that circumstances had failed to impact them. Warfare had compelled them to seek refuge in a city, an action that contravened their preferred way of life. Yet, even under military duress, even as displaced persons, even surrounded by urban temptations, the core commandments remained intact. No wine, no permanent dwellings, no agriculture. Obedience persevered even when the context dramatically shifted. And it was precisely this unwavering faithfulness through insurmountable circumstances that God was about to wield as a hammer to shatter Judah's pride. The word of the Lord came to Jeremiah a second time that day. But this time, it was not a private instruction. It was a public declaration, an accusation, a pronouncement of judgment. Thus says the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, "Go and say to the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, will you not receive instruction to obey my words, says the Lord?" God was poised to utilize the Rechabites as the most damning argument ever presented against his own people. Rabbi Jonathan would later term this a kal vachomer, the principle of ascending from the lesser to the greater, from the lighter to the heavier. If something holds true in a less significant instance, how much more so in a greater one? If a tenuous premise supports a conclusion, how much more powerfully does a robust one? And God constructed the argument with surgical precision. The words of Jonadab, the son of Rechab, that he commanded his sons not to drink wine, are performed, and to this day they drink none, but they obey their father's command. Pause here. Let that sink in. Commands from a man dead for 2.5 centuries, not inscribed on stone tablets, not delivered at Sinai, not accompanied by thunder and lightning, merely verbal directives from a concerned patriarch. And they were obeyed perfectly, universally, by generations who had never personally known him. Now, the contrast. "But I have spoken to you continually, rising early and speaking." Rising early, in Hebrew, shacham, signifies awakening at dawn, commencing with urgency and diligence. God had not been remiss. He had dispatched prophet after prophet, conveying warning after warning. From Moses to Malachi, a procession of divine spokesmen cried out, pleaded, warned, but "you have not obeyed me." 5 words, one definitive verdict, an entire nation condemned. But God was not finished. "I have also sent to you all my servants, the prophets, rising early and sending them, saying, Turn now everyone from his evil way, and amend your doings, and do not go after other gods to serve them. And you shall dwell in the land which I gave to you and to your fathers." That was all God had ever sought. Repentance, a change of direction, abandonment of idols. It was not complex. It was not burdensome. It was the fundamental essence of the covenantal relationship. The divine being who liberated them from Egypt merited unparalleled devotion. Yet, you neither heeded my words nor complied with my commands. Therein lies the stark contrast. The Rechabites heeded the counsel of a human progenitor, while Judah disregarded the universal creator. Foreign peoples reverenced familial customs, yet the designated nation transgressed divine mandates. The Kenites upheld their pledges for 3 centuries, while the Israelites abrogated their covenant within a single generation. Subsequently, Judah faced pronouncement. Thus, I, the Eternal, the God of celestial armies, the God of Israel, proclaim, I shall bring upon Judah and all inhabitants of Jerusalem the entirety of the calamities I have declared against them, for I have spoken to them, and they have not listened. I have called to them, and they have not responded. Adjudication was unavoidable. Nebuchadnezzar would arrive. The temple would be immolated. The city would be razed. The populace would be conveyed into Babylonian captivity. Judah had opted for insubordination. Now they would confront the repercussions. However, for the Rechabites, Jeremiah addressed them. These steadfast refugees, these compliant strangers, these progeny of a Midianite metalsmith. And he imparted God's assurance. Thus, the Eternal of Hosts, the God of Israel, declares, Jonadab, son of Rechab, shall perpetually have a representative standing in my presence. Read it again. Shall not lack a person to stand before me eternally. Eternally. Not for a mere handful of epochs, not contingent upon their adherence to the commandments. Eternally. An unconditional pact, an everlasting pledge, an unending guarantee. And herein lies the theological astonishment. The covenant with David was conditional. Psalm 132 states, If your sons keep my covenant and my testimonies that I shall teach them, their sons also shall sit upon your throne forevermore. Observe that word. If, a stipulation, a contingency. But the promise to the Rechabites contains no if, no condition, no loophole, only an absolute divine assurance. Rabbi Nathan, cited in Talmudic sources, offered a striking observation. God's covenant with the Rechabites surpassed the covenant with David, inasmuch as David's was conditional, whereas the Rechabites was without reservation, superior to the Davidic covenant. Contemplate the significance of that declaration. But what does it signify to stand in God's presence eternally? Jewish traditions suggest that Rechabite descendants served in the Sanhedrin, intermarried with Levitical priestly lineages, and participated in temple rituals. Nehemiah chapter 3 mentions Malchijah, son of Rechab, ruler of a portion of Mizpah, aiding in the reconstruction of Jerusalem's ramparts following the exile. Talmudic records indicate that the Rechabites observed a fixed observance, the 7th of Av, to furnish wood for the temple altar. To stand in God's presence, in biblical parlance, signifies to serve, to minister, to reside within His proximity. Priests and Levites stood before the Eternal. Prophets stood before the Eternal. It denotes intimacy, function, a distinct relationship. Yet, the disquieting question persists. If the assurance was eternal, if a Rechabite would never cease to stand before God, where are they now? Was it mere poetic expression? Or did God truly guarantee the enduring existence of Rechabite descendants throughout history? Archaeology may offer some insights. The relationship between archaeology and nomadic peoples is intricate. Settled societies leave behind impressive remnants, stone edifices, grand temples, formidable fortifications that endure for millennia. Nomads, however, traverse the land with minimal impact. tents decay, campfires cool. Migratory routes leave no enduring foundations. Thus, it is unsurprising that we possess no artifacts labeled Rechabite manufacture. No inscription etched into rock identifying a Rechabite encampment. No tent preserved in an Israeli museum bearing a placard proclaiming Rechabite dwelling, 7th century BCE. However, the absence of direct evidence does not equate to the absence of corroborating evidence. And as we examine the Rechabites' connection to the Kenites, their ancestral metalworking kin, archaeology begins to yield insights. Consider Tel Arad. Excavations conducted between 1962 and 1984 by Yohanan Aharoni revealed an Israelite stronghold in the Negev. But what renders Arad remarkable are the 91 pottery shards inscribed in ancient Hebrew, comprising military dispatches, inventory lists, and administrative directives. Some of these even reference a House of Yahweh at Arad. Now, connect this to Judges chapter 1, verse 16. And the descendants of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up from the city of palms with the people of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lies in the Negeb near Arad. And they went and settled with the people. The Kenites established themselves near Arad. And centuries later, we uncover evidence of substantial Israelite engagement precisely in that vicinity. Israeli historian Nadav Naaman posits that findings at Horvat Uzzah and the Arad Ostraka suggest a continuous Kenite presence in the Negev during the monarchy of Judah. We cannot definitively prove they were specifically Rechabites, but we do know that Kenite clans resided in the very regions where the Rechabites were expected to be. Then, there is Timnah. The Timnah Valley, situated in the Arabah Desert north of Eilat, contains some of the world's most ancient copper mines. Excavations by Beno Rothenberg in the 1960s and 70s, and more recently by Erez Ben Yosef of Tel Aviv University, have unearthed sophisticated mining operations dating back to the Bronze and Iron Ages. Here's what makes Timnah relevant. Midianite pottery has been discovered within the mines. Neutron activation analysis has linked this pottery to kilns in Karaya, Saudi Arabia. This corroborates that Midianites, close relatives of the Kenites, were actively extracting copper in Timnah during the biblical era. And there is more. In the mining sanctuary at Timnah, archaeologists unearthed a bronze serpent with a gilded head. Biblical scholars immediately drew a parallel. Numbers chapter 21 records Moses fashioning a bronze serpent and placing it on a pole to heal Israelites bitten by venomous snakes. Is the Timnah serpent tangible evidence of a cultic practice linked to that narrative? Erez Ben Yosef argues in his 2019 article, The Architectural Bias in Current Biblical Archaeology, that archaeologists have systematically undervalued nomadic societies because they seek the wrong kind of evidence. The early Iron Age in the southern Levant, he writes, was dominated by a largely nomadic kingdom, a confederation of tribes and tent dwellers. The absence of permanent architecture should not be equated with the absence of organized society or political power. This aligns perfectly with the Rechabites. They would not leave behind palaces. They would not construct fortresses. Yet, they constituted an organized clan with clear leadership, a strong cultural identity, and a tangible geographical presence. There is also the Midianite-Kenite hypothesis, a scholarly theory first articulated in the 19th century and further developed by figures such as W.F. Albright and Joseph Blenkinsop. This hypothesis suggests that the worship of Yahweh may have originated among the Midianites and Kenites, subsequently adopted by Israel through Moses' association with Jethro. Evidence supporting this includes Egyptian topographical lists from the 14th to 12th centuries BCE found at Selah and Amara, mentioning the land of the Shasu of Yahweh, situated in Midianite-Edomite territories. Inscriptions from Khirbet el-Qom, dating to around 800 BCE, mention Yahweh of Teman, again a southern region, and ancient biblical poetry in Judges chapter 5, Deuteronomy chapter 33, and Habakkuk chapter 3, describing Yahweh arriving from Seir, Edom, and Paran, all Midianite Kenite locales. If this hypothesis holds any validity, and it remains a subject of debate, then the Kenites, including the Rechabites, were not merely peripheral allies of Israel. They were custodians of the Yahwistic tradition from its earliest stages. This would cast new light on why God so profoundly honored the Rechabites. Perhaps they were the most ancient Yahweh worshippers still extant, preserving the original desert faith, while Israel had become corrupted by Canaanite paganism. Post-exilic evidence confirms Rechabite continuity. Nehemiah chapter 3, verse 14 mentions, Malchijah, the son of Rechab, ruler of the district of Mizpah, repaired the wall beside the gate of the horses and as far as the Oven gate. This dates to approximately 445 BCE, over a century after the temple's destruction. And there stands a descendant of Rechab, not merely existing, but holding governmental authority, instrumental in rebuilding Jerusalem after the Babylonian exile. Talmudic tradition records that the Rechabites held a specific responsibility in the Second Temple. The seventh day of Av was designated as their day to bring wood for the altar. This was essential service to maintain the continuous burning of sacrifices. This demonstrates that the promise, "He shall not lack a man before me," was literally fulfilled through ongoing temple ministry. Therefore, archaeology does not provide us with direct evidence of the Rechabites, but it offers evidence of the Kenites. It reveals nomadic metalworkers. It presents indications of Midianite-Kenite presence precisely in the geographical areas described in the Bible. It shows cultural continuity spanning centuries, and it provides post-exilic confirmation that Rechab's descendants remained active in Jewish life centuries after Jonadab made his vows. Yet, all of this remains ancient history. The truly compelling question persists unanswered. What about the present day? If the promise was eternal, where are the Rechabites now? In 1839, a British missionary named Joseph Wolfe was journeying through Yemen in search of the lost tribes of Israel. Wolfe was an extraordinary individual, a Jewish convert to Christianity, fluent in 14 languages, known for venturing into perilous territories where others dared not tread. Near Sana'a, the capital of Yemen, Wolfe encountered something unexpected. A Bedouin tribe claiming lineage from Jonadab, son of Rechab. This was not merely a few scattered families. According to Wolfe, their numbers approximated 60,000 people. Wolfe recorded in his journals that these Yemenite Bedouins maintained distinctive traditions. They abstained from wine, lived in tents, and preserved oral genealogies tracing their ancestry back to the biblical Rechabites. And most remarkably, they asserted that God's promise in Jeremiah chapter 35 remained actively in effect for them. However, Wolfe was not the first to report contemporary Rechabites. Centuries earlier, in the 12th century, the Jewish traveler Benjamin of Tudela wrote of encountering Rechabite descendants. Benjamin traveled extensively throughout the Middle East, documenting Jewish communities. In his records, he mentions finding 100,000 Rechabites near Pumbedita in Iraq, one of the great Babylonian Talmudic academies. Benjamin wrote that these Rechabites drank no wine and did not sow or reap, subsisting solely on wild plants and dwelling in tents. This description perfectly matches Jonadab's directives. Then there are more recent accounts of Bedouin tribes near the Dead Sea claiming Rechabite ancestry. Ethnographers working among Bedouins on the Jordanian side of the Jordan Valley have occasionally encountered clans that maintain oral traditions linking them to the biblical Rechabites. But here lies the challenge. All such claims are exceedingly difficult to verify. There is no DNA test capable of confirming Rechabite descent. Oral traditions, while sincere, may be imprecise. Clan names can be adopted or distorted over centuries, and in some instances, there may be an incentive to claim a biblical lineage for religious prestige, support from faith communities, or valuable cultural identity. Contemporary scholars remain skeptical. The academic consensus is that while some tribes may preserve vague traditions connecting them to the Kenites or Rechabites, establishing a continuous genealogical lineage over 2,600 years is virtually impossible. But then there is God's promise. Jonadab, son of Rechab, shall not lack a man to stand before me forever. If God uttered forever, did he intend it literally, or was it figurative language signifying many generations? The theological debate is fascinating. Some argue that the promise found its fulfillment during the Second Temple period. The Rechabites served in the Sanhedrin, intermarried with priestly families, and participated in temple worship. When the temple was destroyed in 70 CE, the specific function of standing before God ceased, thus fulfilling the promise within its intended historical context. Others contend that forever means literally eternal. If the covenant with Abraham remains active, if the messianic promises of David still await their ultimate realization, why would the Rechabite promise be less enduring? God does not use the word forever casually. There is also a spiritual dimension. Some commentators suggest that standing before God does not necessitate a traceable physical lineage. Anyone who emulates the Rechabites' faithfulness, simplicity, obedience, and pilgrim mentality fulfills the spirit of the promise. In this sense, the Rechabites are not an ethnic tribe, but a spiritual category. And then comes a remarkable historical development: the Independent Order of Rechabites. In 1835, in England, Christians concerned about the detrimental effects of alcoholism established a temperance society explicitly modeled on the example of the biblical Rechabites. They intentionally chose this name. Just as the ancient Rechabites abstained from wine as a countercultural statement, these modern Rechabites would do likewise. The order experienced explosive growth. At its zenith in the late 19th century, it boasted nearly 1 million members across England, Australia, New Zealand, and the United States. They operated gathering halls where members could socialize without alcohol, provided mutual health insurance, and promoted sobriety through education and community support. The Independent Order of Rechabites still exists today, primarily in Australia. They are not biological descendants of Jonadab, but they are spiritual descendants. Individuals who look at Jeremiah chapter 35 and say, "That faithfulness, that countercultural stance, that commitment across generations, we desire that." So where does this leave us? Do the Rechabites still exist physically, traceable through unquestionable genealogy? Unlikely. The claims are intriguing, but unverifiable, functionally fulfilling the promise of standing before God through generational faithfulness? Possibly. If communities, whether Yemenite Bedouins, Dead Sea tribes, or other groups genuinely maintain Rechabite traditions across centuries, then perhaps the promise endures in ways we cannot fully trace. Spiritually, as a model and inspiration for anyone seeking radical faithfulness? Absolutely. The Rechabites live on every time someone chooses obedience over convenience. Every time a family chooses to preserve values through generations despite cultural pressures. Every time Christians live as strangers and pilgrims in a world that is not their permanent home. The true lesson of the Rechabites may not lie in finding them physically today. It may lie in becoming like them. People of such profound fidelity that it endures for centuries. Such deep-rooted commitment that no circumstance can break it.